Hi up. I dare say Starcraft here. I'm going to be casting a 1 versus 1 game with Men of One Way, and if you don't know who that is, it's BoxeR, the most famous Starcraft 1 player of all time. And this here is in Korean. I have no idea what that says. Really looks like somebody tried to make an alphabet out of popsicle sticks to me. Anyway, I'm going to call him the Slippery Salamander. And it's going to be a mirror matchup, Terran versus Terran, of course. And that's definitely my favorite mirror matchup. Simply because I think it's the most interesting. You can see Protoss versus Protoss turning into the Battle of the Colossus, just swinging their laser penises at each other. And Zerg versus Zerg is almost always Roach Hydra versus Roach Hydra, which is extremely boring to watch them just scuttle about, moving back and forth, trying to decide if it's time to attack or if it's time to test out the stalemate feature that they added to the game. Anyway, I did ask in one of my last casts what your favourite pro players were, and BoxeR's name of course came up a lot, so I decided to get a game of his. Now I don't know if the mic is picking this up, but I'm actually casting this one outside using my laptop. So if you hear crickets in the background or something like that, because I'm in my backyard, there does seem to be quite a large quantity of noisy insects out here. Anyway, I've noticed there's not a lot of replays that feature BoxeR where he actually wins the game. And I think that's because he doesn't release his own replay packs, because he doesn't want people figuring out his play style. And of course, if you play BoxeR, you're probably only going to want to release the games where you beat him. So prepare yourself for the distinct possibility of watching your StarCraft 1 idol get completely destroyed. Now we've got the amphibious creature poking around with his SCV, trying to be a little bother, sliming up the place with his amphibious skin as he skitters about the base. And he's doomed now. BoxeR will clean that up. Now a lot of people, they'll send out their SCVs and just assume that they're gonna die. They like to leave them in the opponent's base for as long as they can and get as much scouting information as they can. Personally, I like to make sure that my SCV is doing alright. Like to bring him back home if I can. I hate losing harvesters. When he gets back, of course I'll ask him how his scouting trip went, what he see and that sort of thing. But first I'll get him a nice hot bowl of porridge, get him some cocoa, ask him how he's feeling, that sort of thing. Because you want him to be happy. We're at war, yes. We're not barbarians, are we? Now you can see BoxeR laying down a bunker at his ramp to prevent any proxy marine rushes early on. And I imagine that happens to him quite a lot, actually. Imagine you're matched up against BoxeR, and you're like, yeah, I guess I'm gonna play against the best StarCraft player of all time, eh? Well, I guess I'm gonna choose him. See how that works out. And it looks like BoxeR's swapping his factory onto the reactor there. He's gonna be getting out a lot of Hellions, I can imagine. The Salamander looks like he's going for Ghosts, and I'm really excited about that particular composition, because if you think about it, the Hellion does extra damage against light units, so it's a great counter to Marines, and it's also good for harassing SCVs. But it itself is a light unit, and the Ghost, which the Slippery Salamander is making, does extra damage against light units, but is not itself a light unit. So BoxeR's going to have a lot of trouble dealing with the Ghost, especially because the Ghost is going to counter every single biological unit, Marines and Marauders both, because of that snipe ability that Ghosts have. Just obliterates infantry. And the snipe ability can be a little bit clumsy, really takes an expert to get maximum damage out of it, but if you're good with it, you can really cripple your opponent. Now you see BoxeR's moving out with 4 Hellions, and that's because it takes 4 Hellions to one-shot an SCV. An SCV has 45 hit points, and the Hellion does 14 damage to light units, which the SCV is. So 4 times 14, it's 56, in excess of the 45 hit points the SCV has. Therefore, 4 Hellions, one shot. Unfortunately, he's not going to be able to get up the ramp here with his Hellions and do any SCV damage, but he does spot that the Slippery Salamander's going Ghost. That's a really clutch scan. But meanwhile, the slippery salamander's got a Hellion in BoxeR's base, but he's gonna get pushed away. It's gotta be this marauder here, badass that he is, threatened him, just said, get out of my base, get out! And the Hellion said, well, I gotta be getting back to my meth lab anyway. I mean, honestly, you've seen the Hellion's teeth, haven't you? That's meth mouth if I've ever seen it. And BoxeR wisely forcing the factory to lift off and get out of here before it can produce any more Hellions for harassment. And a lot of people use the factory for scouting purposes because it does have a lot of hit points. You can get a really full scout off, but it's definitely no cheap thing to lose a factory. And back in the slippery salamander's base, he's got a lot of ghosts. I'm really excited about that playstyle. This is very early to have that many ghosts, but I guess he feels confident, having gotten a pretty strong scout off of BoxeR's base, that he sees mostly biological units, which the ghost is a great counter for that. The only thing working in BoxeR's favour are his Viking. When you land them, they're actually not a bad counter to Marines or the ghosts, but otherwise this is quite a strong unit composition for the slippery salamander against BoxeR. And if BoxeR doesn't change up his unit composition, he's going to be in a lot of trouble. Like I said, the ghosts are going to obliterate all the light units on the map, and the snipe's going to take care of the biologicals. We're going to get to see how it plays out exactly very soon. They're going to do a little bit of cat and mouse, trying to find the perfect place to engage. And yet, those Vikings paying for themselves, going to snipe that medevac as well. Here it comes. That is just expert use of the snipe ability. You hear how many went off, and 4 kills on that, guys. What a butcher, doing his work for sure. But it does look like BoxeR's going to be able to repel this for now. But you have to know that the slippery salamander kept most of his ghosts alive, just lost 1, and they're the expensive unit. 150 minerals and gas each. Losing his Marines, not a big deal. Losing the medevac, not the greatest thing in the world, but keeping the ghosts alive was the big deal there. Now that's great positioning, spreading out his units like that. When you're in a passive position, you don't want to get caught off guard, especially when there's splash units on the map, like Hellions. And later on, of course, it's inevitable that we'll see some siege tanks. You can't pay attention to everything all the time. You don't want your units positioned such that a few shots from a Hellion or siege tank can deal massive damage before you can react. Now it's important to note that BoxeR's got his expansion up now, and he's had it for some time. You look at the income tab, he's actually up by 10 harvesters. And the slippery salamander just now setting up his expansion, so he's definitely going to be behind. BoxeR landing his Vikings in anticipation of this attack. And he's going to repel it really well, cleaning up those Marines. But wow, look at that. Amazing snipe micro. Really making cost-effective usage of his units. Even picking up an injured ghost, moving him to the back there so he doesn't die. But you can see just how well those landed Vikings hold their own against the ghosts. Wisely getting out of there with the medevac, but dropping the ghosts before the Vikings take out the medevac in the air. And he's going to use his Marines to push the Vikings away, because that's really all BoxeR has left anymore. Got a few Marauders to reinforce in the back, but those really just cost the slippery salamander energy to kill. They're a few snipes away from getting completely destroyed, but now the slippery salamander's rallying up quite a lot of Marines, and it's not looking so great for BoxeR now. He doesn't have much to his name to deal with this.